Roll call?
Mr. Brookmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Vacken?
Yes.
Mrs. Place?
Yes.
Mr. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. McKinney?
Yes.
Next on your supplemental is that I'm bringing back the student advisor job description I presented in June 17th of 2008. Again, just approving the job description does not mean that I'm filling the job. It just is one that follows. The reason I'm doing this is I went to a meeting today in Columbus in which the new financial package is coming out. It is very administrative, not friendly, and it is more towards student orientations, including more guidance counselors, more nurses, more aides. It caps secretaries, administrators. I can't go into it a lot because I gotta sit my administrators down and take their building. They're not paying you by the student anymore, they're paying you by a unit. And the closer you get to the unit, the more money you get, but there's limits. So I'll have a cost cap on it once I know what the administrators do. You have to count the number of history, math, science, English, and then you get a percentage of those students, or percentage of those teachers in order to get math or music, art, PE, and the specials. The high school it's a little more. There's all kinds. This is a completely different concept for the state of Ohio. And there were 300 superintendents today going over this form, and at the end, there's a category for the buildings called a building manager, and we think that is another name for an assistant principal. So some of these names on here, we don't have criteria for, but again, it's student-driven. There's family intervention specialists, there's student intervention specialists, and the administrative is very, very thin. So by getting this approved, if we get somebody in here, it'll give them time to get a guidance degree, or we'll find out what these other categories, the student assistant categories, we'll have somebody in place if we decide to do it. So my recommendation is to approve the job description. I don't have a name to go with it, I'm just preparing.
Is this modeled after another state? This whole?
It's modeled after 3 or 4 states.
Okay.
Illinois is one of them. Part of it is an international model. It's a combination of Japan, Germany. It has an international taste to it.
It's a hodgepodge.
And the business councils that they went to with this model approved it. It could be approved in any time between now and October, and they can take out certain parts of it when it goes to the legislature. So this isn't the final draft. They can line out this, but it's pretty clear that it's going to be a completely different way of funding. And what they're trying to do is get everybody to be the same. It's going to take out the big schools that have overinflated staffs because they're not going to pay for them. They're only going to pay for X amount of people. And then anything above that, the school district has to fund it out of different funds.
So the student advisor isn't on this list, why are we creating it?
Well, because that gives us some flexibility that if we want to hire somebody to be that person, we can go ahead and blend it in. Plus, we need another guidance counselor, and that person can become a guidance counselor because it's a job where somebody's working on their guidance degree. In our new contract with the teachers, we set aside money for people to advance their degrees. We set apart X amount of dollars. So when we get this person, they can actually go to school and get a guidance degree if they want. Or if we want to use them for another job that's student-oriented, not administrative-oriented. Because these jobs here on the new formula are more towards the student, not administration.
So is this for the football?
Okay, that's what I was waiting to see where he was going. When we had our meeting, Monday?
Yes.
Sunday.
Sunday.
We were looking because we have such a small window of
Before we go on,
Go
should we
ahead.
have this as a motion, then we can have discussion?
Oh, okay.
Because we're in discussion with no motion.
Yeah, I was just giving my speech.
Motion, anyone?
Okay, a second.
Okay, now discuss.
Okay, we were looking for other options for candidates. Because as they said, you know, obviously we have Mandarin Chinese, which is not gonna pull a whole lot. Girls PE is not viable for football. And math are technically the only openings. And then it was mentioned that we could do some shifting of, you know, the guidance personnel move Sherry, and then we'd have that position. And also, then they, at one time, it was brought up at the one meeting to advertise for a full-time AD and
Which meeting?
an AD slash head
Did we
football
talk
coach.
about that?
The very first meeting of the athletic council, when was that?
January 26th.
Okay, what was the date?
26th.
January 26th.
Okay, and I don't like that, and I said that, and I said that the other night, and I said, well,
That's not part of the criteria of what
No.
we're selecting for head
Right.
football.
right, so we kind of put that away, all right? Because, I mean, you gotta change it, a lot, you know, for lots of reasons. And so
Okay,
then,
if we're creating a position for football, we talked about that the first time. Either a full-time sub or something. Just,
okay,
you gotta
so.
explain
okay.
what it is.
All right, so
I've
what I
seen
was,
this
what I
tonight.
was mentioning, and then I'll kind of leave where Rick
Okay.
opened up. And then I said, well, if we had advertised for a full-time AD football, that meant that Rich's job was gonna be split in two different positions, right?
I guess.
Because, I mean, you know, as a full-time AD, he's not, you know, okay. And I says, well, why not flip the football coach to go with the principal, the middle school principal? Because we're letting coaches, administrators coach, and this way it doesn't compromise the position of the athletic director. All right, then Rich, or Rick, one of the two, and I don't wanna drop names because I can't remember, suggested this dean of students, and that's where that kind of, rather than calling it an assistant principal, they called it a dean of students. And so, they asked us to come back tonight and to bring it up, because we are gonna meet tomorrow night to see if that's a viable, and look at candidates through that.
What's a dean of students?
That's it, we're not,
Is there a job description?
No,
No.
the student advisor can be an administrative certificate or a teacher, so this is a viable way to do both. And also not get into this new formula where we get not paid for an administrator, where we could get paid for this.
but could this dean of students be put in the middle school as, I'm just gonna talk people, you know, Rich, full-time AD, and then this person, football coach, go in that position in the middle school.
The issue is that dean of students, by law, cannot evaluate teachers, they cannot do suspension hearings. Now, in the old days, what they used to do is they used to have a suspension hearing, and they would carry the paper, because the assistant principals couldn't suspend. They'd carry the principal over, the paper to the high school principal and have him sign it. Then it went to court, and a person said, how can this principal sign a paper that he was never in the suspension hearing? So, a dean of students can do none of that.
Now, suppose we had a candidate, and I don't know, that we would get in this, that had the administration certification.
Well, I would do the student advisor, because that would give you the flexibility of not having it count against you in this new formula, because you're gonna pay for it. It'll be, with the student advisor and guidance counselor position, they're gonna fund it to this new formula. You're gonna get that money. If you add an administrator, that's not gonna be funded. And the other issue here is if, and I'm not saying this will happen, but if this school district ever got in trouble and this was adopted,